A mother of five who had all of her children ripped away from her with a no contact order by false allegations from her abusive ex and a corrupt court system.
Oh gosh. I miss Madeline, I miss Brayden, I miss Tristan, I miss Juliana and Jocelyn.
Her refusal to give up or back down.
I want to make something very clear. I know my rights, and I will never, ever stop apologizing for using my voice to speak truth about what's happening in the family courts.
And AI videos of her with Donald Trump. Okay, so that last part got a little weird. Actually, the whole story gets a little weird, to put it as lightly as I possibly can. The author of the series Goosebumps, R.L. Stine, once wrote, "Every good story has three parts: the beginning, the middle, and the twist." On this channel, we recognize the urgent need for family court reform. We recognize that while fathers are disproportionately affected by being made the non-custodial figure in their children's lives, mothers can also have custody ripped away from them in a second, especially if the father has a lot more money. We also know that we need strong, well-articulated female voices in this space, because if it's all men, they're not going to listen to us. In fact, every time I do hear about a woman who presents herself well, is educated, and cares deeply about these issues, I am immediately drawn to her. I make it my mission to ingratiate myself with these women so that we have the highest possible chance of actually fixing these issues. But we also know that in this fight, we have a lot of bad actors that end up causing a lot more harm to our movement than good. Today, I'm going to share with you a cautionary tale, one with many twists, turns, and drops. Shocking allegations, jaw-dropping receipts, and mysteries still yet to be solved. A tale that certainly reminds us why the phrase right message, wrong messenger exists. This is the story of Stand With Meg. Now, I do need to offer a bit of a legal and editorial disclaimer, a CYA, if you will. The following video examines publicly available statements, court-related claims, and social media content shared by the individuals involved. It reflects my analysis and opinions based on those materials, and it is intended for commentary, education, and public interest discourse. And with that said, we are going to jump right in to Meg's story. But before we do move into one of the messiest stories I have ever covered, let's give ourselves a quick palate cleanser. Because if you're going to spend the next however long listening to me talk about other people's crimes, you might as well make sure that your breath isn't also committing crimes with today's sponsor, Breath Death. Breath Death is the brand behind Crystal Breath, exploding mint crystals that kill bad breath on impact and are really fun to use. These aren't like regular mints or gum. No perfume masking, no fake ingredients, no endless chewing. Crystal Breath dissolves in seconds and actually kills bad breath at the source. Powered by zinc, these mints attack sulfur compounds in the mouth that cause the stink, meaning it's not just covering it up, it's ending it. And it keeps your breath clinically fresh for up to 4 hours. Plus, they come in these small resealable tubes, so it's easy to keep them in your pocket or in your bag so you can stay strapped. They're all natural, 0 calories, fast acting, dentist approved, and pack a powerful peppermint punch you can't get enough of. It also makes for a fun little party trick for when you need to low-key tell your friends they need a little refresher. And because Breath Death is sponsoring this video, they are offering my viewers an amazing deal. When you click the link down below in my description box or the QR code here on screen and subscribe to their 8-tube pack, you won't just get their regular 15% off and free shipping, but an additional 10% off just for watching this video. It's an exclusive deal you won't find anywhere else, so click the link and get started on your mission to destroy bad breath. So let me tell you how I first learned about Stand With Meg, because I was immediately fascinated. I was first told about her page maybe last year or the year before, given the type of content that I cover about family court reform and fighting the injustices within it. Tons of people were like, you have to check out this lady. They were like, she has been through some crazy shit. Now she's documenting everything, walking the halls at the Capitol and demanding change. You are going to love her. So I went over to her page and let me tell you, they were not kidding. Her story is a nightmare. Buckle up, grab your stress ball, because this gets crazy. It all started back in 2006. Meg is a young, single bachelorette when she meets another young, young single father named Craig. And I can already relate to this story because I myself was once a child-free single woman who fell in love with a single dad. And I know that dating single parents isn't for everybody, but it can also be used as kind of like a cheat sheet, right? Because it gives you a view on how they will behave as a parent before you like invest too much time in them. And that's how Meg felt. She thought that Craig was great with his daughter and she was charmed by him. So charmed, in fact, that they were married within 6 months of meeting. Okay, so that's red flag number one. A bit quick. But hey, sometimes it works out, when you know, you know. Except for when you don't, and you accidentally marry a covert narcissist who completely flips the switch and changes as soon as they put a ring on your finger, which is essentially what Meg says happened to her. Very quickly, things began to go awry. She tells us that basically the first night of their honeymoon, Craig begins to show his abusive tendencies. By the way, you're going to hear me censor out the word abusive. It's just because YouTube is very, very sensitive about that kind of thing. Trust me, I wish I could simply say words. She describes herself literally climbing down the bed to get away from him and him continuing to pull her back, chastising her for not being good at sex. She also says that he keeps going on and on for way, way, way too long. It's basically not a good time. She also immediately gets pregnant. Then he starts having her sell all of her worldly possessions, telling her that's basically going to be best for their family, but don't worry, he'll offer her a $1,000 a month allowance. Now, $1,000 a month isn't exactly a survivable income, but if you also don't have any bills to pay and you don't have to work and it gives you an opportunity to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom, I can see why that might be an attractive offer. But there are also downsides to becoming too financially reliant on your spouse and from being out of the workforce for too long. Now, Meg was also having a hard time being super thrilled about this developing bundle of joy inside of her because apparently Craig had also already started cheating on her. And now that Meg is married and pregnant, Craig just starts getting so much worse. He's constantly screaming at her and scolding her for everything. And a really weird thing, Craig starts expecting her to claim his daughter from his previous marriage as biologically her own. And when she doesn't, especially in public, she gets scolded for it. I found this very jarring because I don't think most of us would feel incredibly comfortable claiming a non-biological child as our own biologically when we know damn well that kid did not come out of our womb. Especially if the biological parent is actively involved, which Craig's ex-wife certainly was. She describes one incident where Craig takes her to a work party, and she's feeling very quiet, introverted, and she doesn't talk much. And this pisses Craig off. So the whole drive home, he's speeding. He's driving 120 miles per hour, and she's pregnant and scared out of her mind. So at one point, they get to a stoplight, and she actually tries to leave the vehicle, which pisses Craig off again. So while her legs are still dangling out of the car and the door is open, he floors it. Can you imagine how terrifying that must have been? She describes another incident where in front of the babysitter, he got so mad he threw a phone at the wall and left a hole in it. It's getting so bad that while she's pregnant, she actually starts to make a plan to leave Craig. And at this time, Craig was actually planning on going on a solo trip without her. So she uses this time to start getting all of her stuff out of the house. She actually starts stashing it at Craig's ex-wife's house. When Craig gets back from his trip, all of Meg's stuff is gone and the divorce papers are on the counter waiting for him. So Craig's freaking out. He's trying to call Meg, no answer. Finally, he does get a hold of Meg's dad. He gives him some song and dance, and Meg's dad, he's kind of a conservative guy. He wants the family to work. So he calls up Meg and somehow convinces her to go back to Craig. So she does. Now, Meg comes from a big family. She has 8 other brothers and sisters. So despite all of the trouble in paradise she's experienced so far, she really wants to give her daughter another sibling, and not long after that, she has her first baby boy. But Craig is not getting any better, and the verbal abuse continues. He especially gets riled up whenever Megan needs any medical assistance of any kind. She describes one incident on Easter, no less, where she was experiencing mastitis, which is inflammation of the breasts that commonly occurs when a woman is breastfeeding. It's very painful and she needed some help. But that annoyed Craig, so he started screaming at her and berating her for this before just completely storming out and abandoning her and the kids on Easter. She would later find out that the real reason he picked a fight and left was to meet up with his side piece. She even showed us some of his dating profiles that he found while with her. Yet another time, she needed to take their son to the hospital because he had RSV, a very, very serious medical condition for a newborn. And that once again pissed Craig right off and resulted in him screaming at her as if she chose to give her son RSV. But despite all of this, Meg goes on to have 3 more children with Craig, the last 2 being a set of twin girls. And every one of those pregnancies would go on to be exactly how you would imagine an absolute horrifying shit show that no one should ever have to endure. During one pregnancy, Craig takes the family dog out back and shoots it in the head. During the other, their barn cats had an unexpected litter of kittens, which very much annoyed Craig, and so he told Meg that he was going to put them in a bag, take them to the river, and drown them, resulting in her expeditiously finding them homes to avoid such a cruel fate. And during all of this, Craig was still going out, taking solo trips, going camping by himself, not inviting Meg or the girls, much less calling to ever check on them. And Meg believed that he was cheating on her this entire time, which she might have been valid in thinking, considering right before the twins were born, Craig told her that he was leaving her for another woman. So before the twins are even born, Meg and Craig have separated, and Craig hires a nanny named Shelley, who he pretty much marries as soon as the divorce is finalized. Our boy Craig, he gets married fast, but maybe 3rd time's the charm. But the courts do listen to Meg. Legal documents show that the courts found that Craig was both physically and verbally abusive to Meg, and she is awarded about 80 to 90% custody of the kids, child support, and alimony. But she does not find peace. Craig and Shelley, his new wife, become a nightmare for Meg. First of all, Meg can't seem to go anywhere without Craig somehow knowing exactly where she is. She can't shake this feeling that she's being stalked, being tracked. So eventually she takes her vehicle in to be checked for any tracking devices, and wouldn't you know it, they found one. Meg is able to get a personal protection order against Craig, who is then also charged with a stalking injunction. But despite that personal protection order and stalking injunction, Craig will not leave Meg alone. He begins writing her handwritten love letters and sending them to her home almost every single day, despite living with and being with Shelley. Then one day he emails her with 101 things I wish I did differently, where he admits to a wide array of very bad acts, including but not limited to actual SA. At the same time, Shelley, the new stepmom, is going around and telling other moms that the twins are biologically her own. Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff that has made my blood boil throughout this story. You don't mess with dogs, you don't mess with cats, but you certainly do not mess around with claiming another woman's children as being biologically your own. Now, I'm a stepmom, and my kid tends to call both me and his biological mom, so I could see someone maybe getting confused in passing, but according to Meg, that is not what happened here. Meg actually describes a very specific story where she goes to one of her kids' sporting events, and a mom approaches her and says, "Oh, are you the twins' nanny?" And she goes, "No, I'm their mom." And the woman goes, "Oh, well, Shelley said that she was their mom. And as they talked about it, the other mom was like, this actually makes a lot more sense because when I was talking to Shelley, she didn't even seem to know that there was a difference between fraternal and identical twins. Very weird. There's actually like this horror psychological thriller movie called The Hand That Rocks the Cradle that is all about a nanny trying to take over this mom's life and take her kids, that this situation really reminds me of. Meg even provides us with footage from a police interrogation where we see Shelley saying that all she wants is for Meg to be arrested so that she can take her twins and go.
Push comes to shove. What I'd love to see happen is she's arrested and I go get the twins and he's on. You can't even move.
Right.
I know that's not going to happen.
Well, if you'd have come in with a black eye, that's a little different.
Right.
Would have been a little easier.
It's a very strange clip where Shelley seems to have this like very wide-eyed, buggish-eyed look the whole time, and it ends with the police officer essentially telling Shelley that if she wants her dreams of Meg being arrested to come true, that it would have helped if she had more obvious defensive wounds, which Shelley doesn't seem to have, and Shelley actually seems a bit disappointed by hearing. Things continue escalating between Craig and Shelley and Meg, and Craig gets a lot more aggressive in his legal strategies, and soon Meg starts to lose that 80 to 90% custody that she previously had. It eventually drops to 60-40, then to 50-50, which I'm typically all on board for. I'm a big fan of 50-50 custody. I really do think that's ideally the best situation for kids when appropriate. But then, one day, it goes to 0 when, in January 2024, the kids are abruptly ripped out of the house with a no contact order based on false allegations filed by Craig, the judge, and the guardian ad litem, and Meg would never see or talk to her children again. That is Meg's story. A compelling, heartbreaking tale about a victim who grew 5 children in her womb, raised them their whole lives, only to have them snatched away by her abuser and his evil wife who are hell-bent on making her suffer. And that is how the page Stand With Meg was born. This is what inspired Meg to begin advocating for things that are good and noble causes, such as judges becoming more educated on domestic violence, more support for pro se litigants with limited financial resources, and especially higher evidentiary threshold for allegations. And you have to admit, it's very easy to understand why people are so attracted to her messaging and how she was able to accrue 50,000 followers on TikTok and almost 100,000 on Facebook. She carries herself very well. She's extremely articulate. Her videos have a very high production value. She always looks fabulous. And like I said, we need female voices in this space if we want anybody to take us seriously. That is, unless she's one of those bad actors we talked about. Unless she's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Unless she's been hiding a dark undercurrent of secrets this whole time. And this is where we get the twist.
Mom, I don't know if you can hear me.
Thank you guys. I've been trying to work and not focus on anything but my work, and
Really hoping to avoid making this TikTok, but if you've seen the video of that woman before, her name's Megan, my sister, then I wanted to just grab you really quick and just say a few things. If you've seen her content and you've been worried about the children in it, specifically the one with the young girl crying at the beginning, I blurred her face out, those kids are safe. Those kids are fine. The videos are growing in popularity rapidly. The one of the young girl crying in the Ring camera is, I think, almost about to hit 1 million views, which is why I'm here having this conversation with you right now, because I think it's important that you know that the kids are safe and fine before we get into the other issues with that video. So Exhibit A, these are the kids. These are the children she's talking about. That's one of the young ones, and then that's my kid right there. This is Memorial Day last week. All hanging out, having a good time. Kids are healthy, happy, thriving, doing great. Exhibit B, that's my other child being held by the stepmom that's had a lot of things said about her, and the dad right there, Craig. I would like to say, like, very normal people. Not that exciting. So now that you've seen that the kids are safe, which is the most important thing, Without sharing too much of their story or her story, I did want to address a few things about Megan as a creator on this app. So in that video of my niece, the one crying, that's almost reached 1 million freaking views, the only way you as a viewer would get the idea that she's scared of her dad is because of what Megan put on the top. That video is actually super old. It was from a day when Maddie was obviously very scared, but she was looking for her mom. She was not scared of her dad. There's a whole other situation that was happening, but it was not fear of her dad. That was totally something Megan added on top to further her own narrative. The second thing that you as a viewer should be very suspicious of is anytime someone's sharing details of a child's health, like mental health specifically. Her kids live nearby, so it's highly likely their friends at school will see those TikToks or show them to them, so it's opening them up to a whole host of confusing conversations. It is just abundantly cruel to share children's information, stories, likenesses in a way that's disparaging or confusing. The other thing you might notice, if you even watch just more than like a handful of her videos, is that her story is changing about in every video. So first, she's lost her kids because the court systems are corrupt and she can't get an attorney because she doesn't have enough money, but then she also can't get an attorney because all the attorneys in Johnson County are corrupt, and then also that her ex is stalking her, and then also like the reason she's making these TikToks is to help women, help victims of DV. She says she wants to change some laws, but it's all just like very unclear, ambiguous, ever-changing, but she's clearly not missing opportunities to monetize off this experience. Here you can see she's using her children's likenesses to try to generate subscribers. So to wrap this whole thing up, in summary, kids are great, they're safe, they would like to see their mom, and without getting into the details of the story, she is being treated justly by the court system, and she does have everything she needs to see her kids again. So please consider either just scrolling past, or if you see her sharing her kids' likeness or her kids' stories, please consider reporting it and pulling it down. At this point, we're just here making sure the kids are good, the kids are safe, and we do wish Megan well. I wish Megan well, but at this point she needs to cool it on sharing children's information. Thanks.
As she mentioned, the woman we just heard from is Meg's sister, SJ. And this is where we get SJ's version. And SJ's version would come with a mountain of stories that contradict Megan's, debunks a bunch of Megan's claims, and introduces us to a whole world of new information. And I have to admit, even before finding SJ's videos, there were already some parts of Meg's story that had me skeptical. The first is something that SJ also points out, which is how often Meg takes advantage of using the TikTok shop monetization tools. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way how Meg would basically fearmonger her audience by using these terrifying, scary stories about her ex to sell safety tools.
As you know, I had my ex put a GPS on my car before, and this would have been a lifesaver.
The next contradiction that I definitely noticed myself was that Meg would originally claim that she had her second child on purpose.
I purposely got pregnant again.
But then later says that Craig forced her to get pregnant to trap her.
It is incredibly difficult to leave an abuser, and a lot of times they purposely get you pregnant so you're stuck.
And the third thing that I definitely noticed is that Meg is constantly saying throughout all of her videos that she's way too poor to afford a lawyer, but apparently wasn't too poor to buy herself an entire billboard advertising her social media. Twice. Now, I also understand that she lives in a pretty rural area, so maybe it wasn't that expensive, but she also mentions that she specifically bought them for the highway. And highway billboards, from what I've gathered, tend to cost thousands to tens of thousands a month. And if I'm not seeing or talking to my children for months to over a year, you bet your sweet ass that my money is going to a legal retainer, not advertisement for my social media platforms. So if you, like me, did have some doubts about Meg's story before, SJ is about to rip all of the credibility rug out from under her. So first of all, Meg claims that the whole reason her children were taken away from her were false allegations from Craig. But SJ reveals that there were findings of abuse that came directly from things the children told their therapist. SJ also tells us that Craig and Shelley are not the heinous Disney villains that Meg makes them out to be, and actually describes them as normal, boring people. Another thing Meg tells us a lot on her page is that she has done everything she needs to do through the courts to see her kids. But according to SJ, Meg has had ample opportunities to be reunited with her kids. She just doesn't want to do the supervised visits, won't show up to them, and will not cooperate with the reunification therapist. But more on that later. Let's get back to some of Meg's other claims and SJ's version of these events. One of Meg's claims is that the children should have never been taken away from her because she has no record, not even a speeding ticket. SJ debunks this.
We have evidence that they take kids from a mother like me that have zero. I don't have any record. I have no DUIs. I don't even have tickets for speeding.
Why the fuck you lying?
Meg claimed at another time that the courts made her shave her head 6 times for drug tests. And SJ said she never had to shave her head, she simply had to do a hair follicle test. And that story makes way more sense because at no point from 2006 to now do we ever see a single picture of Meg with even remotely short hair. I'm sure you're also wondering about the insane stepmom allegations. So the story behind the police interrogation is that Shelley was there talking to police because Meg was being charged with battery against Shelley. At that time, the twins were also very sick, which is why Shelley was in such a state of urgency to take them and just get them home. And in kind of a state of urgency to just get Meg behind bars, so she wouldn't attack her again. As for Shelley claiming the twins as biologically hers, Shelley says that that never happened. It really was just a misinterpretation because she was seen with the twins. Next up, Meg has been claiming throughout all of these videos that she has basically been forced to be pro se, meaning you represent yourself without a lawyer this entire time, but SJ tells us that that's just not true. Pretty much throughout the entire divorce and custody cases, Meg actually had a very high-powered attorney, which is how she got not only the 80 to 90% custody, but $3,000 a month in child support and an additional $3,000 a month in alimony, which Meg conveniently leaves out when trying to promote how poor and destitute she is, while Craig is giving her $6,000 a month. The only reason she lost that lawyer was because of the findings of abuse and the no contact order, at which time that lawyer recused himself and did not want to work with Megan anymore, which would become a pattern for her, but again, that's coming up later. Regarding Craig's cheating, SJ doesn't really deny that claim, but she does add another fun little detail, which was that Meg was also cheating on Craig. So as much as I do not appreciate or condone the cheating, kind of cancels each other out at that point. So now let's talk about the tracking device and the personal protection order. So Meg tried to get a personal protection order, one of the classic silver bullet moves in any custody case to try to keep the ex you don't want seeing the kids away even more. And they tend to grant them pretty liberally as a safety precaution, but it was pretty quickly ruled out that it was not necessary, so it was set to expire within just 30 days of being granted. During this time, Meg was threatening Craig that she was going to take the kids and just skip town and run away, which apparently she had done before. So on the 30-day mark, Craig went ahead and put a tracking device on the vehicle because it was his. That vehicle was actually in his name. The only technical problem was that the docket hadn't formally canceled the PPO, and so he did end up getting in trouble for that. As for the love letters, they weren't love letters. Craig is very religious, and his religious pastor told him that as a sign of good faith, he should write her letters of goodwill, saying that this is something that would ultimately help the children. SJ also gave me more information about the questions I had about Meg's financial priorities. Outside of the billboards, SJ also informed me that Meg was also spending exorbitant amount of money on a trip to Greece, Botox, new boobs, a $500,000 house, and a brand new car. Can't afford a lawyer though. But how could she pay for these things without a job, you might ask? Well, SJ and her sisters did a little bit of digging and they found out that the way that Meg was paying for these things was, any guesses? Any guesses from the peanut gallery? If you guessed that, you win! Finally, I asked SJ if she knew anything about the dog and cat abuse. And while SJ can't prove or disprove these allegations, and neither can Meg, SJ highly doubts that that ever happened, saying that she's seen Craig with his new animals, and he treats them with nothing but love and adoration. But she did offer an alternate theory. SJ revealed to me that during her and Meg's own childhood, their mother would also make up horrific lies about how their dad would murder animals in order to make them fear him. Something that SJ talks about a lot more in depth on her channel is the parental alienation that she experienced during her childhood. Parental alienation is exactly what it sounds like. It's when one parent tries to alienate the child from their other parent in as many ways as they possibly can. A lot of times it's just physically separating the child from their other parent as much as they can. Many times it's emotionally separating them from their other parent, maybe convincing them that their other parent doesn't love them, that their other parent doesn't even want to see them, or that their other parent is a bad person. And while this is most often seen in high conflict custody cases, it can occur during a marriage. This can be when one parent wants to be seen as the favored parent, and maybe they grew up with a mindset that the only way to be preferred is to put others down. It can be so that their spouse is the constant scapegoat and punching bag when things go wrong so that they don't have to take any blame. And many times it's just another fear-mongering technique so that that parent truly will learn to believe that they will lose their child forever if they don't comply. So this "your dad is killing animals" thing is a method that SJ believes may have been passed down generationally, unfortunately. And at this point, before we move into the new evidence and the real reason that Meg lost custody of her children, I think that we should pause and talk a little bit about SJ's and Meg's childhood, especially and particularly the issues with their mother, because it sounds like they had a mother from hell. Meg talks a lot about her mother on her channel. She talks about her mother praying with her, supporting her, even allowing her to take a little lakeside getaway at her Airbnb. But SJ has a very different version of growing up with their mother. I'm just gonna let SJ tell it.
As my sister Beth hinted at, our mother did the same thing. So let's talk through the role model that my dear sister Megan had. We were raised very traditional, conservative Christian, homeschooled, just one of those families. And most of my life was spent hating my father, which made sense because my mom and dad fought a lot. I think they were married like 35 years before they finally got divorced, but they tried to make the marriage thing work. So after years and years and years of being at odds with my father, who I believed to my core was abusive and manipulative and hateful to my mother. When I was like 23, I was doing a lot of therapy, trying to figure out I was super espresso depressed all the time, and started reflecting on some of the stories my mom had told me about my father. And I realized every story that I had in my little paquito of why my father was an abusive, terrible person was a story that I had heard secondhand from my mother. My mother. I don't know, I'm speaking Spanish this morning. He hadn't actually done any of those things to me, but we lived in the same house. And I was like, that's super weird. So I went to some of my other siblings and I was like, hey, yo, so mom told me this. What did she tell you? And they proceeded to be like, oh, no, mom told me this. Very different stories around what had happened growing up. And like, these were like really severe stories. So like, there were stories, my mom used to tell me all the time that my dad said he would divorce her if she ever got fat. That was like a big one she repeated often. He'd never said that. There were more severe things. Cops were called at one point. She used a method that Megan would then later copy of putting a restraining order on my dad, even though she was the one that physically attacked him. But my mom cheated on my dad, and this has been verified not only by my siblings, but by people in the community. We're like, yeah, no, like, I remember seeing your mom with, I had one girl reach out to me on TikTok, and she was like, yeah, no, your mom was hooking up with my stepbrother's dad. Like, I remember that in high school. Did you not know that? And I was like, I didn't know that. So, like, my mom made up stories about my dad and caused so much much parental alienation against my father until when I was like 23, after I had this like crazy realization that my dad wasn't the villain, my mom was the villain. So yeah, then my father and I reconnected and have been able to rebuild a really beautiful, boundaried, kind, compassionate relationship. He knows my sons really well. He is not currently incommunicado with my sister Megan right now. He is not a fan of the way she's behaving. But this methodology of telling children and telling people horrid stories that aren't true has been modeled by our mother. So I did buy into Megan's stories for a very long time. But when I realized that all of the stories were secondhand, and when I started doing my own research, as in talking to the children who she was saying that this stuff had happened against, when I started talking to professionals, started talking to just the other people, I was like, oh no, that's not what she told me at all. And then when she started lying to me and I started recording it, that's when I knew that the allegations against her ex-husband were likely completely false.
Okay, this reads, "You're so funny. Thanks. My mom locked my dad in the basement with a deadbolt and had me put his dinner on the stairs and yell for him and quickly lock the door like he was an animal."
You guys are hilarious. Because when I made a TikTok talking about my mom locking my dad in the basement, you guys are like, but what did he do?
And that last example is very relevant to a video that I just made called The Everything is Men's Fault Problem, where I talk about this exact phenomenon. Every time something bad happens to a man, even when it's something horrific like being locked in a room by their spouse, society seems to have this knee-jerk reaction of, well, what did he do to deserve it? Because he must have deserved it. According to SJ, she, her sisters, her brothers, and especially her dad suffered every kind of abuse under the sun from their mother. Religious abuse, physical abuse, mental and emotional abuse, you name it. And almost none of them talk to their mother anymore, except, of course, Meg, who I guess seems to have just taken that childhood and manifested it into, this is just how you're supposed to parent. And I won't spend too much time on their childhood, but I felt that a lot of this was pretty relevant to help us understand what we have learned and what we're about to learn. And speaking of, it is time for your jaw to hit the floor again, because we are now moving into the new evidence. Because look, that no contact order was only supposed to be for 30 days, and both SJ and Meg are incredibly vague about what a lot of those issues entail, but we do get a lot of new information that will tell us a bit more on why that no contact order ended up lasting a lot longer than 30 days. What we do know now through both Megan and SJ is that the findings of abuse did come from things that the children told directly to their therapist. And what we do know now through SJ, while she does keep it very vague, understandably, is that SJ wishes that it was limited to just verbal abuse, just yelling a little bit. But she tells us it was much worse. For example, SJ tells us that at one point, Meg instructed her oldest daughter to go to the police and make false allegations about her father at the threat of, if she didn't, being sent to foster care, which her daughter was deathly afraid of. Understandably, the foster care system is terrifying. And what we also know now is that Meg introduced her oldest daughter to synthetic marijuana at the age of 14 and smoked it with her. Don't believe me? See for yourself. Here's Meg admitting it.
And I said, fine, if you want to do this so bad and you're going to die without it, then we'll do it together under my supervision. And I did that, yes.
Okay.
But it's not you. That's it. And then she went to her friend. And that is the truth.
Okay. So then the truth is you have provided me with HHC then, intentionally.
After she got to it and after she realized how much she liked it, yes, I did together, her and I, that we would do it together because she was begging me and it was a time for us to bond. She'd laugh, I'd laugh, we'd huggle, we'd snuggle, we'd talk about deep things. That was it. And I will tell any cop, I'll tell any social worker, I'll tell them all.
If you don't know what HHC or synthetic marijuana is, they call it gas station weed because it used to be just sold at gas stations. It is a highly unregulated substance that is known to cause psychosis and mental breakdowns similar to what we saw with bath salts. And it's also definitely illegal for anyone under 18. So while so far a lot of this has been she said, we are now starting to get some pretty hardwired, irrefutable evidence that maybe Meg isn't the best mom. Finally, the children begin speaking out about not exactly loving that Meg is blasting their faces all over the internet. Kids at school are talking about it, it's embarrassing them, it's affecting their mental health, and so they actually speak up, and the courts decide that Meg needs to take these videos of the children down. Does she do that? A cursory review of her page tells us that she did not. Now, despite Meg trying to keep a lot of these allegations vague, despite SJ trying to keep a lot of these allegations vague, Meg cannot help but yap about this behind closed doors to other friends and content creators who are not as responsible with keeping things vague. This results in one of Meg's content creator friends making a video that I guess she intended to be defending Meg, but just ended up causing so much more damage. In this video, her friend is basically saying things along the lines of, you know, these allegations are really nothing. Like, I've done the same things that Meg did. I too have left my baby alone in the bassinet while I went out with friends. And, ma'am, that's not normal or appropriate at all. I seem to remember a very viral podcasting couple who faced a ton of backlash for simply suggesting that they might leave their kid alone in the hotel room at the cruise while they went out for dinner with baby monitors. And like I said, this video did some damage because this video caused a full-on CPS investigation on Meg. And that CPS investigation resulted in full-on judicial findings of substantiated child abuse. With friends like these, who needs enemies, right? But does Meg take a single step back or take any accountability for how her own behavior might be negatively affecting her case or her ability to see her children? Nope, she just doubles down even harder with blaming absolutely everyone else. Which brings us to, where are we at now with this case? First, let me give you the SparkNotes summary. The children are first removed from her care in January 2024. Meg is given ample opportunities to resolve some issues and see her kids, but instead she scares her lawyer away, scares the reunification therapist away, refuses to pay her court fees, refuses to comply with the reassignment of a new reunification therapist, won't stop posting the kids to TikTok despite a court order, won't show up to court, gets put in contempt of court for not showing up to court, files continuances, meaning she is delaying being able to see her kids, sues the state of Missouri, sues the state of Kansas, sues CPS, sues her guardian ad litem, sues Craig, sues her own sister SJ, most of which cases have been dismissed already. But then, finally, Meg agrees to the new reunification therapist. She originally was not budging, insisting that it needed to be her own personal therapist of the last 10 years, which is already a conflict of interest, but gets a little bit more complicated when you learn that she has previously paid that therapist in boudoir photo shoots, making it even less appropriate, but she agrees to the court-appointed one. Finally. She is finally going to get the chance to see 3 out of 5 of her kids. The other 2 have aged out of not having a choice in the matter. They're now old enough to decide for themselves if they want to attend this reunification therapy, which they opt out of. All she has to do is just not record anything during the therapy. What do you guys think Meg does? What do you guys think Meg did, chat? If you guessed recorded anyway, and then subsequently lost all of her rights to the aforementioned reunification therapy, you would be correct. Why, Meg? I would say we were all rooting for you, but like, I think most of us gave up at this point. So as of right now, Meg's job to get anything moving in the direction of finally seeing her kids again is to find a new guardian ad litem which needs to have a certain set amount of certifications, which I am sure she is going to delay further and further and further because no one's ever good enough and because no one really wants to work with someone who's just suing everyone around them. But don't worry, folks. You can still hire her. That's right, here's her website, Learn with Meg, where she teaches you how to understand how court really works. She'll teach you how to decode the system, log the evidence, and speak the language. Anthony S., father, custody case, who is certainly not an AI-generated man, gives her 5 stars. You can choose your path. Tier 1, a $30 membership. Tier 2 for only $70, or you can have one-on-one private coaching with Meg. And like, this has all been very bad, but this right here is one of the scariest parts of this whole situation to me. Like I said, if you'd never found SJ's videos or this video or any other videos criticizing Meg, you'd likely find her content extremely attractive and compelling. You'd probably believe her, like I did at first. She carries herself so well. She actually shows up to these committee hearings, talking to state reps and senators and legislators. She really looks like she knows what she's doing. And a lot of men and women are desperate for solutions that won't cost an arm and a leg. These monthly courses at $30 or even $70 a month are still a lot cheaper than a lawyer. So a lot of vulnerable, alienated, beaten down parents might just be willing to give their money to women like this. So on this note, I want to share another one of SJ's videos that is perhaps one of her most important videos covering the dangers and harms of coaches and programs like this.
If you're in family court and you're having a really rotten time, and you're maybe considering going pro se, it's maybe your last option, and you've seen somebody saying that you can buy a course, or you can buy a guide, or you can like consult with somebody, and it's more affordable than an attorney. If you're seeing that, and you're like, hey, could this be the right step for me? I want to encourage you to ask 3 questions of this person that you're considering paying your hard-earned money to, because you're already dealing with a lot. Your kids are in the mix, finances are in the mix. This is a very stressful time. Ask them or ask yourself, has this person been successful?
And she is so right. I love that question. You have to ask yourself, have they been successful? And that brings us to our conclusion. You've heard Meg's story. You've heard SJ's story. You've seen evidence from both sides. And I'm not here to tell you that either one of them is telling the complete truth. And I'm not telling you who or what to believe. What I am telling you is that this is why we have to be incredibly protective of family court reform spaces and very skeptical of who we allow to lead them. Because when people are desperate, when they've lost access to their children and they're broke, terrified, grieving, they are uniquely vulnerable to bad advice and bad actors. And there's enough danger in and around family court. There is a growing industry built off of family court trauma, with courses, coaches, fundraising campaigns, and social media experts who claim to be the authority on guiding you through these systems that they will convince you are corrupt and rigged and out to get you. Some of these people actually do have expertise and can put their money where their mouth is. Some of these people are very well intentioned, but aren't actually very helpful. And some of these people absolutely know that they have no credentials whatsoever and don't care. Because intention is not the same thing as competence, and self-importance is definitely not the same thing as credibility. When people with questionable backgrounds, unresolved legal issues, and a demonstrated pattern of conflict position themselves as these authorities in this space, the harm doesn't just fall on them. It falls on all of the parents who follow in their footsteps, and most importantly, the children whose cases are affected by it. Bad advice in family court doesn't just fail quietly. It blows up in people's faces. It alienates judges. It damages the credibility of your case, possibly for the rest of your child's minor years. It turns solvable problems into high conflict war zones. It can cost people custody they may have otherwise preserved. And once the damage is done, it is very often irreversible. People need to understand the dangers of going pro se without fully understanding the risks. It actually doesn't look good in court when you frame every adverse ruling as proof of corruption. It doesn't work out very well when you teach parents to distrust every professional involved in your case. And it never turns out well when you teach people that any compliance and any accountability is bad. As someone who's been involved in the family court reform space for a long time, definitely a lot longer than Stand with Meg, real reform requires credibility and it requires restraint. It requires leaders who model accountability, who understand boundaries, who understand the gravity of legal systems, and most importantly, who put the children, not social media platforms, at the center of their advocacy. So keep calling out the bad actors and fakes, and more importantly, keep edifying the leaders and advocates who are putting in the good work, the hard work, and the necessary work that we need for our families. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the very end. I worked really hard doing all of the research on this myself, doing the filming myself, doing the editing myself. In fact, I actually recorded an hour and a half before realizing that my mic had become unplugged 12 minutes in before I got this version. So if you could please hit the like, that will make me feel a lot better about losing about an hour and 15 minutes of my life. And to further help with the engagement, if you could leave your thoughts down below, and if you can't think of what comment to write, just write, "I stand with advocates." And of course, if you liked this video and you want to see more from me, definitely hit subscribe. I swear I have a lot of other videos that are a lot more lighthearted and funny than this, but listen, sometimes we gotta get serious, and as a sneak peek, I have a lot more exposés coming up for you guys. And thank you so much to Breath Death, our sponsor, for helping with the production of this video. On that note, I've been recording for a really long time, so it is about time I go and eat something. Okay, I will see you guys in the next one.